So for me, the most intellectually engaging element of the Translation Studies programme, well, there are two actually. The first one is that I strongly believe that to be a good translator, you need to be a really excellent reader. And so in the first year, we spend a lot of time teaching or thinking about how to read like a translator. So it's all about identifying the features of the text very quickly, and then using that knowledge to create an appropriate translation. So when I say features, I mean the style, the syntax, but also the register, but then also who is writing the text, what is their position, what are they consciously or unconsciously trying to say, which messages are getting through, whether or not they're intending them, and then who's reading the text, or who does the writer think is reading the text, and how are they going to relate to the messages coming from the writer. And then obviously when you're a translator, you need to think about who is going to read the translation, which might be a very different audience from who's reading the source text. So I like the kind of intellectual kind of problem solving involved in working out both overt and covert messages of a text, and then how you're going to convey those in your translation to various different audiences. The other intellectually interesting thing I find about translation studies is the different theories of translation that we study in the second year. So we think about the role of the translator, and for example, should they be visible as a translator or invisible? In other words, when you're reading a translation, should you be able to tell it's a translation, or should you read it as if it's an original text written in the translation language? So we talk about things like, how would you capture the spirit of a Mexican text, for example, in English? Would you use some Mexican words? Would you play with English syntax? Would you keep the names of people or places? Or would you in fact say, no, I'm going to not make any Mexican echoes in this text. I'm going to write it as if it was originally written in English. We also think about things like the translator's preface. What kind of information does the reader need in order to understand the choices that a translator has made? Should a translator respect the author of the original and try and really recreate what they were trying to do? Or should they respect the reader of the translation and try and make the text easy for them to read? Now obviously this will depend on whether you're talking about a literary translation of a novel or a poem, or the translation of an instructions manual or a recipe. So we talk about the translation context, we talk about the different requirements of the source text and the target text, and finally we also talk about different kinds of texts and what translations of those would look like. And we use text in a very broad sense to mean written texts, but also films, adverts, podcasts, for example.